Hi, thanks for coming back. This is episode 5. This is entitled Good God, Good Grief. Now, why would I title something like that? Well, in our last episode, episode 4, you recall we were talking about life being like a river with the two shorelines. One on one side is very physical, and we're very familiar with that one, and we're comfortable there. But I said, when you're traveling down the river of life, sometimes you need to pull off to the side and rest a while and dry dock and peer on the mystical side of the river, the mystical bank that's not so clear, because that mystical bank holds the secret to the purpose of our lives and its fulfillment, the fulfillment of our lives. And I said, this is where you will encounter God. I'm Deacon Pete. I'm a retired military engineer and former deputy sheriff. I'm an author. I'm a pilot. I'm also a chainsaw carver. I'm a husband, a father, grandfather, and godfather. I've been an ordained preacher for over 20 years. This channel is intended to help folks from living a senseless, meaningless life that's going nowhere. I want to give people hope for living a fulfilled life. I call my approach the promise in the profane. And I know what you might be saying. You might say, well, wait, Deacon Pete, I thought this was the promise of the profane. This is life outside the temple, which is a definition of the profane. Excuse me, buddy. This is life outside the church. It is. It is about making sense of our profane lives, our lives in the profane world. But life without that attention paid to the mystical side of our lives, the mystical bank, if it's just spent on the physical side, it's a losing battle. Well, to fight life with nothing but physical aspects of life, well, you've got nothing. You got nothing to fight with. It's frustrating. Life does not resolve itself with just a physical, and you die frustrated, you die purposeless, and unfortunately, you may as well be a raccoon or a cat. Right, buddy? All right. But you can't tell me you were surprised by my reference to God. I mean, just by my outfit, by my vestiture, and this appliance on my that appears in every one of the videos, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Anyway, this appliance here. Anyway, that wasn't a surprise. But be that as it may, I want to ask you a question. You may take umbrage at a reference to God, and I'm going to ask you this: not believing in God in your life will not help you find purpose for your life. It will not help you with a direction for your life, and it will not help you with fulfilling your life. For that, I'm afraid you need the greater strength that we talked about that has this purpose and has a plan for you is God. You can't even choose the right type of boat to float down the river. Excuse me a minute. We have technical difficulties. Resistance to a belief in God just doesn't make sense. Because when you do that, you got nobody to blame when things turn to heck. When life goes into the toilet, you ain't got nobody to blame. I mean, you don't have anyone to blame. And you deny yourself, like I said, a life of purpose, a life of cause. And what will vary as you get older, as you grow older, take it from old me. As you grow older, you will have to abandon any hope of life beyond death. That's serious. Belief in God is different than religion. I'm not talking about religion right now. Religion, all the religions of life are belief systems, and I'm not talking about that yet. Religions are social reactions to encounters with God. Later episodes we'll cover some of the different kinds of religions, the broad classes. And we'll go into some of the religions in details as much as my own background allows. There's so many things I can only be one religion, and so I'm not an authority in all the others. I just want you to hold open the possibility, and I would say the probability, that this greater strength in your life that has determined so many things for you is God. I've done a lot of thinking about God, believe me, over the years. And I'm working, like I said, I'm going to repeat this. I'm well into my 8th decade of life and done a lot of thinking. And it is nice, although it's very intimidating, to have a place where the buck stops. Trouble is, he's the final court of appeal. He's it. You don't get to take your case higher. You don't have any recourse. But I want to ask you, those of you who do not consider God in your life, when your life turns to ashes, to whom do you complain? To whom do you pray? To whom do you shake your fist at? Trusting that there is a God. It requires a leap of faith from you. It requires that you trust. It requires a lot of things. You may say, and this is the big deal. I mean, this is the big argument. You say, there is too much evil in life for there to be a good God. If God is so good, why is there so much evil? That is a deep dive, and it deserves a deep dive, and that deserves its own episode, okay? We'll consider what all the ramifications of that. If there is a good God, how can there be so much evil in the world? And believe me, I know there is evil in the world. But let's just suffice it for now to say that your acceptance of God is critical to understanding your life. Just critical. It's also critical to your acceptance of any logic to death. For you to live a life that is fulfilled, satisfying, a life of purpose, it is critical that you have a relationship with God. Trust, not me, but trust that God has your back. Trust your mind and grasp the logic of the greater strength. All right, do that. Trust yourself and your judgment. Trust your inner heart that craves love, and trust your deepest desire for purpose in life, right? Your life has purpose. Trust that. Trust your inner demand that your life makes sense. By golly, you are not some biological accident. No, sir. You're on purpose. You're for a purpose. All right? You've got a purpose. And you know, good and wonderful, wonderfully weird people. You know these things in the deepest recesses of your heart. You know these things. All you have to do is just quiet down. Give yourself some time away from your cell phone, from your texting, from your computer, from all the influencers of your life. Break away, like I talked about in the last episode. Go to a private chapel at a funeral home. Go to an empty church. Go to a cemetery and sit on a bench there where it's real quiet. Go someplace that you can be by yourself and be safe and be free to ponder. Be free to ponder. You know, we're going to talk about many, many, many things in this series. But one of the things that we'll talk about eventually when we talk about religions and such as that is we'll talk about sacred scriptures. We'll talk about the Bible, you know, and where it comes from and why people believe in it and that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about that. But, you know, there are pearls all over in the writings of mankind. And there's a pearl in the Bible that I'd like to share with you. And it's a pearl and it quotes God. All right? It quotes God. It's in the Psalms and it says, "Be still and know I am God." That is the promise in the Profane. My dear fellow pilgrims of life, let's see what we can see as we go down the river.